Welcome to today's 5-minute Bible study in the book of Joshua. We're in Joshua chapter 11. Today we start reading at verse 16. Now you recall that the first half of chapter 11, that is verses 1 through 15, detail the northern campaign of the conquest of the Promised Land. Remember, as the Israelites took the Promised Land, they did it in 3 campaigns or 3 phases. There was the central campaign where they took the center of the land. And then there was the southern campaign. They took the area in the south. And now the northern campaign, which is first 15 verses of chapter 11, where they take the northern part of Israel. So when the northern campaign comes to an end, they have essentially come into possession of the vast majority of the promised land. There are still pockets, there are still places that have to be overcome, and that will take a while, but essentially the land is now in their control. The promise has been fulfilled. Israel is in possession of the promised land. Now, the last half of chapter 11, verses 16 through 23, is sort of a summary description of the campaigns and what the Israelites had conquered, the area they had taken. It's in 2 parts. Verses 16 through 20 is the first summary, and then verses 21 through 23 is some particular details of the conquest given. So we'll take it in 2 parts. Let's look at the first few verses, verses 16 through 20, a summary description of the taking, the conquest of the promised land. So Joshua took the entire land, the hill country, that's all in the center, all the Negev, that's in the far south, the whole region of Goshen, the western foothills, the Arabah, and the mountains of Israel with all their foothills. This describes the center and the southern section, the center of the land, the hill country, all taken. It also includes the area along the Jordan River. From Mount Halak, which rises towards Seir, that's down in south toward Eden, to Baal-Gad in the valley of Lebanon below Mount Hermon. That's all the way from the south to the north. Israel has taken all of the land, from the bottom part of the land of promise, the Canaan, to the top portion near Mount Hermon. Joshua captured all their kings and put them to death. Joshua waged war against these kings for a long time. Except for the Hivites who lived in Gibeon, not one city made a treaty of peace with the Israelites, who took them all in battle. Remember, the city of Gibeon had entered into a treaty with Israel. They got it by deception, you recall. But they did enter in a treaty. They became servants to the people of Israel. They served the tabernacle, the sanctuary. It was the Lord himself who hardened their hearts, that is, all the kings of Canaan, to wage war against Israel, so that he might totally destroy them, exterminating them without mercy, as the Lord had commanded Moses. So it's just sort of a brief description of all the land from south to north, all the hill country, all the land along the Jordan. The only thing they really didn't take was the coastal plains. That will become the land of the Philistines a little bit later. But they didn't take that. But all the hill country they've taken. The promised land is now in their possession. Notice it says it took them a long time. You know, sometimes when we're reading the book of Joshua, we think, well, it's just a few weeks they've got the land. No. This was years in the making. I think we mentioned a couple of sessions back. It was probably about a 7-year campaign. So it probably took around 7 years to accomplish all that they've accomplished. It was not done overnight. This was a long campaign, but now it's over. Also, it says, it talks about, which troubles us somewhat, about he destroyed them completely. Now, that does not mean everyone died in all these areas. No, it's very specific on what is meant by those who were destroyed completely. That's going to be explained more totally in the next few verses. So I'm going to save that for the next session. So in verses 21 through 23, we'll talk about why so many were destroyed completely, what that means. It was not a campaign of genocide. They were not destroying all the Canaanites. That's the misunderstanding of the scripture. But there were many who had to die. Why was that so? What's going on here? We'll see that described in some detail in verses 21 through 23. But what I want to focus on today is that for about a period of 7 years, they came into possession of the promised land. The promise of God made so many years before Abraham has now been fulfilled. It took a long time, but now Israel is in possession of the land. Now, of course, they will have to settle and begin to live there. They've been a nomadic people for a long time, but now they're going to settle down in Canaan. They're going to make it truly Israel. So we'll look at the other description at the end of chapter 11 tomorrow about why so many had to be destroyed. What does that really mean? We'll look at that in tomorrow's session. So join us next time for our 5-minute Bible study in the book of Joshua.